Well, Maria, it's good to be here with you in Paraty, right? We've both been there, but we haven't both been there in person at the same time.
No, we haven't. I think last year it was beautiful. What a beautiful place. And I did some shooting there actually last, like 3 years ago. And you've been 3 times, I think, there.
I think I might have only been twice. No, I think I've only been to Paraty twice, but maybe I've been 3 times. I don't think so. I think 2 times I've been there. But anyway, always good to be there. Always good to be in Brazil. But today I think we want to talk about something that's important to all of us, Maria. It's important to you, and it's important to all the photographers who are in the audience right now, and that is our environment. Obviously, the environment has caught up with our progress, with man's desire to move forward. We've managed to do probably a pretty good job of. I don't know if we've destroyed the environment, but we certainly haven't done the natural environment any good. But you think the same thing, Maria?
Oh, yes. And we are seeing all the effects now in California, in Brazil. It's devastating. And well, in my case, I work in that area near Brazil, and fires um, were at one time, at one point, a problem.
Well, where I live, it's interesting because we've got the effects of global warming here where I live. I live on one of the barrier islands, excuse me, along the coast of the United States, and there are literally hundreds of barrier islands that are islands just offshore of the entire East Coast, and they are unique to the East Coast of the United States of America. And they are fast changing geological phenomena anyway.
Mm.
So they move and they change, and the water rises here anyway. You add global warming to that, and those of us who live here, we know that well, people aren't going to be able to stay on this island for certainly not for another generation. Let's put it that way. Combination of global warming and just natural erosion.
Right.
This photograph, for example, gives you some idea of what I'm talking about. Now, nobody obviously would build a house out into the sea, but it hasn't taken very many years for the sea to come right up to the waterfront houses and destroy the waterfront houses. This, what you're seeing right here in Nags Head, North Carolina, is pretty typical along the coast. It doesn't mean that every house that's built on the coastline is going to have this happen to it, but it happens quite often. And the houses that are on the ocean front, they disappear into the sea, and then the houses that were back a bit uh, suddenly have waterfront property. I mean, it's even a joke that no matter where you build, you'll eventually be on the water. You'll eventually have waterfront property, and it's basically true. No matter how far back you are from the water, it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years, it could be 30 years. Eventually, you'll be on the edge of the ocean. This is on the backside. The island that I live on is, in many cases, where I live on this island, the ocean is about 2 blocks away from me. And this side, the bay side, is about a half a block from me. So I'm squeezed by two different bodies of water, both of which can be dangerous in a storm. This very calm looking water here is on the bay side, but we get as much flooding from this side as we do from the ocean side, maybe even more. And so I've got maybe my island is only a half a mile wide where I live. And you can see this tree is out in the water, not because it grew there, but obviously because the water rose in just a few years. This is probably a 20-year-old tree, and you can see that it's already dead because the water has risen right up to its shoreline. This picture, I've been working on this a lot all year, and I like to use a little tiny flash in most of my landscape pictures, not to get too technical about it, because what I'm trying to show here is a ship offshore pumping sand up onto the beach where I'm standing. And that's what's happening. That ship out there is like a big pump, and it pumps sand off the bottom of the ocean and pumps it right up onto the beach. But of course, I wanted to show that at sunrise. I was hoping to get the birds flying by, which I did. But the whole point is to show the ship and the pipe pumping the sand in the most effective graphic way. That's why I use just a tiny, tiny flash to balance out the sunrise. Again, I'm showing the effects of man trying to stop nature. Now, everybody knows that you cannot stop the sea, but man has always tried to stop the sea. All over the world, we try to stop the sea. We have landfills. We do everything we can to alter nature, even though we know that it's a losing battle. And this is just down at the end of the street where I live. They put concrete from old streets and old construction sites to shore up the edge. I can tell you that this calm body of water, when it gets moving, will take all of those heavy slabs, which must weigh a couple of 100 pounds each slab, and they will move it. They'll move it out onto the road. I don't know how it does it. Water moving at a certain volume and at a certain rate can move anything, and it will move these slabs. Also, you can see here that the house in the far background, I like to work in the fog because it makes everything monochromatic, even if you're shooting it in color. And I'm doing a lot of this work down here in black and white on purpose. Again, I use a little bit of flash here to fill in the detail on the front, but what I'm showing here are how close the houses are to being destroyed that are on the ocean front. And you can see this looks like a World War I combat zone, right? And that's because the sand fences, it is a combat zone. They're trying to prevent the ocean from taking away the beach here. And some people are, of course, saving the beach for the birds and the turtles. And some people are just trying to save the beach to rent out summer houses because that's a good piece of the economy here. I'm doing some things with the art and the architecture. I'm always interested in architecture, both the good and the bad. And the Benjamin Franklin stores are an old department store here in the United States of America. There aren't many of them left, and this one's just classic, the old 50s design. So this must have been one of the first stores built down here in Nag's Head. And you can see that they've taken a local artist who's painted the fish and everything on the side to make it as attractive as possible. So I do the architecture, the barriers, the pipes, the engineering things that are happening, and of course the people are part of my project as well. But it's Americana. I mean, the Outer Banks. This is North Carolina. A mid-Atlantic state, and so this is the salt of the earth, America. The American flag, the hot dog sign. I saw this, and I went there to get a hot dog. That's why I was there. But I always have my camera with me. I mean, I'm always shooting whatever's going on around me. And when I saw this, I couldn't resist. I just kept shooting and shooting and shooting. You'll see a little seagull sitting on the little pole in the back there. And you can see my flash reaches all the way back to that road sign. I just had a little tiny flash in the hot shoe, but I knew that it would pop the American flag and the hot dog sign, because this is in the middle of the day. The light was terrible, but I made it better by using the strobe. And here I'm just using the lights to my car. I use light, I was trained in a photo studio, so I learned how to set up lights when I was a kid. So, but since I'm a natural photographer out there shooting life as it is, and I can't carry a studio around with me, I've learned how to use whatever light is around. So I can use a flashlight, I can use my car lights, of course I can use a strobe, but in this case, this is the lights to my car. I pulled up in a particular position, flipped it on brights, moved it around a little bit, and then went for it. Probably if I were moving lights in the studio, I could have done a little better job, but this is the best I could do with what I had. And of course, in this kind of pre-dawn light, I've only got about a couple of minutes when I can even make this picture. 5 minutes later and it's too bright on the other side. So I had to do the best with what I had. This is another case of most of the pictures are showing art and architecture that's been overcome by the sea, and this house is abandoned and just sitting all alone out there on the beach, and it's kind of symbolic, in my opinion. With the rain on the glass and then the house just sitting out there, kind of sad. I kind of felt this symbolized the whole idea of an evolving barrier island that wants to just have nothing on it. This is a tradition here in the Outer Banks. Everybody takes their Christmas trees at the end of the Christmas season. They take them down on the beach. And why do they do that? Well, it's just a tradition anyway, but now we look at it as a way of holding sand. So you can see the sand fences are there to hold the sand, but all of a sudden you'll get dozens and dozens of Christmas trees down on the beach in early January, and they really do hold the sand. The sand starts building up around the Christmas trees, so it's a renewable resource. We use the tree to celebrate the holidays, and then we use the tree to hold the beach. I mean, we know it's a losing battle. Everybody knows it's a losing battle, but life is a losing battle. So everybody wants to hang on to everything as long as they can. And it's true of these islands as well. Again, I hate to keep talking about technique, but I know that some photographers are interested, because most photographers are going to look at this and say, how in the world did you do that? Because I'm shooting at very low ISO of two surfers who are surfing past sunset. The sun is already down, but the sky is reflecting off the water. And by a miracle, I just happened to have a pretty powerful strobe in my bag. And with the Leica strobe, the Leica Q, and I had the biggest one that they make, and it just reached these surfers. So I had a slow shutter speed to pick up the sunlight on the water and all the people on the beach. And then the flash just reached out and stopped the action on the surfers, because I was shooting at a slow shutter speed, but of course the strobe stopped the action. So again, an environmental picture, and kind of these guys are just playing around. I mean, normally you wouldn't have two guys on a wave if it was a really good wave, but this is just what they call a party wave. They're just having fun on their way home. The old wooden piers here are classics. I mean, we've got one concrete pier, but the old wooden ones the wood in the water lasts about as long as the concrete does, which is an interesting engineering fact. The wood flexes. When the waves come crashing up against this wooden pier, the whole wooden pier is shaking, right? But it's actually kind of a good thing. It will last a lot of beating, maybe better than concrete in some cases, because it's flexible. But you can see the size of the waves that comes in, and you can see people venture right out on that pier, and they love to feel the whole thing shaking beneath them. Again, this is just down at the end of the street that I live on. I do most of my photography within an easy bicycling distance of my house. I've always believed, and I teach my students to photograph what's right around you. And so I'd say a good 90% of these pictures are all within 5 or 10 minutes of my house on a bicycle. And so you can see the sound side shoreline. You can see those same concrete slabs and how close the water is to the street. And that water will move those slabs up onto the street in a storm. I don't know how it does it, but it does it. This picture is just what I kind of call a nostalgia picture. This doesn't make any point. You know, I've showed you some pictures that make an editorial point. And this one is just, you know, this is why I live here kind of a picture, you know, an atmosphere picture. And this is why I live here. You know, you could imagine reading a book, you could imagine watching a storm come in. The dangers that are here are why everybody lives here. I mean, you say, well, you're crazy to live in a place that's so temporary. And I'm thinking, God, what an adventure to live here. All these things that I describe as potential dangers are also exhilarating. Storms coming in are exhilarating. And if I was standing on my porch here and a big wave took me away, I figured that would be time for me to go. I'd be happy going that way. Again, you can see man trying to say, look at, see that road? That's the main road down through the Outer Banks. If you look at the Outer Banks on a satellite picture, you're going to see that road, and you're not going to believe the Outer Banks when you look at it on a satellite. But you can see the ocean's right there to the right, the road's there to the left, and that sand dune is not, you can see, is not a natural sand dune. That's a sand dune that probably got built a few hours before by an earth-moving machine. And that's why I wanted to show this picture. This picture is, by the way, in my newest book. I've got a lot of pictures from the Outer Banks in the book Off for a Family Drive because I started my photographic career in this area, you know, just about 50 miles north of here. So where I fell in love with photography is where I'm continuing to stay in love with photography. And it's because of this changing environment. I was sort of born into this kind of a evolving environment. And now, Maria, let's, you know, Maria, I have to tell this audience is one of my all-time best students, somebody that I mentored. I guess I started in Mexico, right, Maria? Maybe 6 years ago, or was it 6 or 7 years ago?
8, I think, or I don't know. I don't count, but it's several years.
Yeah, more than 5 and less than 10, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that Maria had that so few photographers have, and I marvel at the way Maria works, but she goes out every morning to shoot after I critique in class, and every day Maria produces. Now, Maria does literally come up with good pictures every day. That is, that Maria is able to produce on demand. In other words, you say, Maria, go take a good picture. She can go take a good picture right now. She'll find something to photograph good. Not that many photographers can do that. The professional photographers do have to produce on demand. There are plenty of good photographers who are great photographers who cannot do that. I could name, you know, Sebastian Salgado, one. Kudelka, another one. Great photographers. Sally Mann, another one. Great photographers who aren't going to go off and produce on demand. They would admit it. That, you know, they may or they may not be able to do that. That's not what they do. They work long-term over projects. So that's one kind of photography. But Maria can do both. She can produce on demand on a daily basis. And obviously, she's worked on her first book, Quilombo. She's got another book coming up in Bolivia. So Maria is one of my all-time terrific examples of somebody who learns and listens and who has an eye. And she's also, you've got your environmental pictures here, right, Maria?
Yes, but thank you, David. As you see, David is a great mentor. He gives a talk. He's always teaching. He's speaking about which flash. The first time I heard him, he said, I have no secrets. And that's true with David. He always is teaching and teaching and teaching. And that's what I love. And in part, my photography, I owe a lot to David. But now, well, from the Outer Banks, now I'll take you all the way to Bolivia, to the Amazon River basin and La Plata River basin, where people have a deep understanding of preserving and conserving nature, and also their legacy. So I began this project many years ago because I was admired by this. I love this. I wanted to know more about them. So I'm working in 12 different communities where the Jesuit missions settled. This is in Mojos and Chiquitos, and they came to evangelize in the 17th and 18th century. But they did more than that. They protected them from slavery, from the Portuguese slavery. Um, and they created these autonomous settlements, and they taught them several skills, but particularly, and where is my interest that touched my photography curiosity, is that they taught them to make and to play instruments. And I think this European culture that intertwined with this local indigenous is a valuable legacy. So, and it's still alive. They were expelled, but they did get to escape to the forest, taking all these instruments and Baroque music partitures that were wrapped in leather. So this image you're seeing here shows this church here. This is the only organ left. There's no more. It was made by what was his name? Martin Schmidt. He was a missionary, but he was an architect and he was also a musician. So he made this with the local wood. And there you can see Don Luis. He plays the organ, but he plays also other instruments like violin.
Maria, this is an incredible image. What's that light coming in on the left? Did you make that light, or is that daylight coming in?
No. I don't use flash, David. I would love to use, but I just work with natural light. It was coming just from the window, and it was dark. The church was closed, and he plays the organ. So that's natural light, no flash.
Beautiful image.
Thank you. This image also shows that that music is so ingrained in their culture. For example, Luis's granddaughter, her daughter plays the violin. And it passes through generations. Then we can see, as this is conserved, the European instrument, then we can go to the next picture that to show that they also, I think Jesuit did respect their instruments. This man here, he makes his own instruments, and they are made from natural, it's a type of bamboo. And they join it with homemade cotton threads. And it comes in different sizes. You have very little. And if you see his expression here, the love for music and nature of Chiquitos and Mojeños can be felt and seen in their daily life. He gets together with people once a year. And they all get around in a circle, and they play all these handmade instruments. And they themselves make their instruments. So then we can go to the next one. Well, this is a workshop. It's from a luthier. His name is Don Miguel. And I was so surprised to see, if you see all the type of woods there. So he gets all this wood that is thrown away, and he uses all this discarded and also new woods. He specialized in making violins, but he also repairs them, and cellos, you can see guitars, you can see a bandolin there. And he uses the strings, he uses the lamb gut. But lately they are using these metal ones. So this is Don Juan de Dios. He's a machetero dancer. and he dances with that like a crown in his head that has 180 feathers. He maintains it every time with a type of, I think, wax. And the machetero is a pre-colonial native war dance. And members only dance with this original clothing. And because they swear to a group, a certain group. But there's a sad part in this because to have that made, you need to sacrifice several the blue parabas, and that's the sad part of this. But this lasts like 18, 20, 25 years. It depends how you care for it. Then in the right side, you can see in the chair, this is another instrument that it's called the what's the name? Well, I think it's the chacay. It's made of this wild seeds, and they are used in the ankles. So this connects them to Mother Earth. These instruments are called bajones. You usually play it in a duo, and it's made from a certain palm tree that is you find it only in this place. It's called the Kusi palm tree, and it's a very nice pre-colonial instrument. And when you see them with
Maria, is there any controversy in cutting the trees to make these instruments? I know that you're using music as part of an environmental initiative here. I'm just curious, is it controversial at all that they be cutting the trees to make these instruments, or is it just not?
yeah, well,
So
yeah,
few
this,
so
yeah,
many.
yeah. Some instruments like a violin, they have to use two types of wood, but they don't. It's not a commercial, so it's maybe sometimes they take it from their backyard, a tree, or they buy it from some authorized person. But these palm trees, these are the leaves of a palm tree. So anyhow, they fall down, right? So it doesn't really affect, and it's not commercial, so it doesn't impact really nature.
Okay.
Now, well, this is a dancer. He's a young man, and you can see that he's wrapped in this. That's how they dance. Jaguars are popularly called tigers in this place, and they are seen as emperors of the forest, and they are worshipped. So, if a person has survived a tiger attack, for example, he's regarded as blessed or a very respected person in the community. And they conserve these tiger skins, but of course, after 20, 30 years, they begin to fade. And lately, young generations are using fabrics that resemble the tiger's skin, and this to avoid the sacrifice. This is like a dance. There's a lot of masks in these communities, especially here in the northern part. They do this of soft wood. They carve it. The hats are made of leather, but they preserve this mask and everything. Everything they do, it's instruments or masks. Um, they take good care of them. These are the achus, by the way. The achus represent the elderly, and they make jokes, and it's I like them very much.
Well, but I got lost here, Maria. Where are you specifically for these masks?
Uh, where? Sorry.
Where are you for that picture?
Oh, for this one, I am in Mojos, in San Ignacio de Mojos. And this is in the north part because the Jesuits had different.
North part of what?
Oh, Bolivia. Sorry, I'm in the east part of Bolivia. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean. You know so much. Yeah, I think that
Sorry.
maybe a lot of
Yeah.
people didn't know where you were at all.
Yeah, no, I'm in Bolivia. I'm in the east part, very near to Brazil. Several times I felt like just driving half an hour more and drinking some
No,
coffee.
I knew. I just wasn't sure everybody else.
Yeah, it's like the border. These missions were in Brazil too. They were in Argentina, in Paraguay, but these were the only ones that really survived until now.
Very strong picture.
This is a mamita. The mamitas are, in Spanish, they call themselves a veces. They take care of the churches, and they are usually elderly women, and they become like custodians of the church, and they do the flower arrangements. She's this woman. She's leading with the flowers, and you can see that she has a broom, and that broom is also made from a palm tree. Hipuri is the name of the palm tree. It's a native of the Amazon River.
Very nice.
And some of these mamitas, they do the candles too. And here I went to visit one of them, and this is in another community, but they do the candles, and they use every day. They go to the church, and they all the waste they recollect it, and they do new candles. So this reuse of the wax is very interesting. And the wick also is made with homemade cotton. And this constant reuse of natural materials shows their appreciation for frugality.
That's right. That's right. Beautiful.
And this is, well, devotees, when they go to these churches, they put these candles, but these candles are made from paraffin. They are not like the other ones of beeswax. And it's part of the economical and technological adaptation. So you have this preservation of ancient skills, and also you have, they predict weather. I have an app in my cell phone to know if it's raining or going to rain today. But they observe cattle's behavior, certain birds. They observe there are certain snails that gather at the edge of the river when a flood is coming, and they maintain that. So this is my last image. This is just to show you how people. This is a common home. This woman lives here with his father, and she had just recollected eggs and fresh eggs, and well, they live like that. This is an example. So, and I think we can learn from these invisible. I call them invisible custodians. They have this deep understanding and preserving and conserving and respecting nature. So, and they have this love of music that my project is also very focused on that. And some artists do get inspired by them. I know an artist, Gabriela. Um, she does. She's inspired. She was inspired by them, and she does this beautiful art made from waste wood. So, well, I think in these times of profound reevaluation of our priorities, we have what we were seeing, the storms in North Carolina, the fires in California, and the Brazilian Amazon, in the Bolivian Amazon as well. All this is is threatening our survival and the survival of these communities as well. So I think that we can learn from them definitely, and how to create wealth in scarcity, and rather than create waste in affluence.
It's going to be hard, but I think you're right. I think it's going to be hard for all of us. I think in the very near future. I'm talking about within my lifetime, which is not that much more. But I think that we're going to have to adapt very, very quickly, and everybody's going to have to. We're in a sacrifice mode now with COVID, and I think we're going to stay in sacrifice mode for the foreseeable future because we just have to. We have no choice. So I think COVID, it's like you'd imagine God coming down, right? And fire and wind and you know, earthquakes and tornadoes and and hurricanes and flooding and everything. It just all seems to be all that stuff has always happened, but now it just seems a little bit worse, right?
Yeah, no, and we have to, each of us, every day we impact nature. Every day we're impacting nature. So I think we have to do things. Just taking care of electricity. I see when in David, for example, is a good example. He would be like an invisible custodian. You go to his home, and he doesn't have a dish machine. Everybody has a dish machine here in the state. It's very common, but he doesn't have that. He doesn't turn his air condition. He opens his door, and those little things make a difference. We impact every single day our environment.
Most people don't have that much. The problem is most people don't have that much control. A businessman knows that when he gets on an airplane and flies from New York to Sao Paulo, that he or she is burning an incredible amount of fuel to get from New York to Sao Paulo, but they have to do it because that's how they earn their living. They're in business, they're a salesperson. So most people really can't do very much. I mean, they can recycle, but it seems like big things need to happen. And that's going to be the interesting conversation for the future is that how can we make big things happen that are economically viable and that people are really going to accept and will actually do something for the environment? I do not have any idea. That's out of my area of expertise, but I'm very curious what the experts do have to say about that.
Yeah, and well, and we're seeing with COVID how that this impacts us. Uh, David and his project, you can speak, David. I mean, he's working every day. He goes out, he shoots, and he's not affected by the COVID that is related to all these issues. In my case, I can't go to. I had to cancel all my trips. I can't go down to the Amazon part, the Bolivian Amazon. But we did work, right, David? David doesn't stop.
No, that's right. No, well, we've both been very lucky that we've been able to continue our work. And as you'll know, Maria's part of another class that I'm doing by just like this by Zoom. I've got a 6-month class that has been taking place entirely in COVID. Now, here's the interesting thing. COVID has produced the best class I've ever taught. I mean, the students in the class, because they couldn't go anywhere, because they actually had to look in the mirror and face themselves and do photography that was right next to them, they all complained about that because they thought they were going to India, they thought they were going to Mongolia, thought they were going to some exotic place, but no, they all had to stay home. And guess what? Brilliant. Some brilliant work came from these students because they couldn't go anywhere. So it's an interesting thing. You know, art does come out of adversity. Usually when everything's fine, you're probably not writing a song or making a movie or writing a book. No, it usually takes adversity for people to get into creative gear. They need to be suffering or in pain or something in order to create something, or something that they really need to do. I think Maria, when I met you, you really needed to express yourself as an artist. When I first met you in Oaxaca, that was something that was I didn't know why you needed that, but I knew that you needed that, and I knew that you were going to do it. So there's always an empty spot that needs to be filled up with art. And that's why
Yeah,
people create art, because the glass is half full.
right. And now, well, you finished your book. Then you did, what else did you do? You're doing this work too.
Yeah,
You're doing your classes.
yeah. I finished the book I was working on. I was able to do this by remote control. We printed in Italy, but I was able to, get the binding and get the paper. Smells good. No, I was able to do this by remote control, but that's only because I had a dear friend on press in Venice, in Italy. Diego. Diego, and he really did stay on top of it. And then the book I'm working on now, I'm hoping by the time it gets ready to go into production, that I won't have the COVID hanging over me. I'm assuming we'll get a vaccine within a year, and I'll be able to go to Europe and watch it be printed. But in the meantime, because of COVID, because of the lockdown, because of the stress of the environment, I'm really, really, really into it. I mean, I get up every day and I go out, and I don't have a specific agenda. Usually, I don't usually have a target place. It's kind of a serendipity work, and I'm on my bicycle, or sometimes I'm driving. It just depends. But it's one of those things, and it surprises me, because Maria, I earned my living traveling around the world many times for National Geographic. You would think I would feel restricted being here at home all the time, going down the same road, seeing the same place every day. Somehow that has gotten into my psyche, into my soul, and I'm enjoying seeing the same thing every day. But what's a miracle about it is that I see it a little bit different every day. Don't ask me how. I don't know how, and I don't even want to find out how exactly. I don't want to, whenever I'm in the zone for taking pictures, people ask me about that. I don't want to analyze it too much, because I'm afraid if I analyze it, I'm going to kill it. It's some kind of magic. Me standing in that water is just very dangerous for two reasons. Number one, if I slip, I'm going to lose my Leica, right? I don't have an underwater camera with me. But what do you think the real danger is? Part of the danger is getting sucked out to sea. I can handle that. I mean, I grew up as a surfer, so I can handle that. With a camera around my neck, it's not so great. No, the real danger is debris. Because if you see the waves hitting those houses, wood, logs, electrical wiring, everything is out there floating around in that water. If a wave hits me with a log in it, I'll either be crippled for life or dead right away, right? So
Yeah, you
that's,
have to be careful.
but when I'm looking through the viewfinder, I'm looking through that viewfinder, and all I can see is a picture. And the water's warm and it feels good, and I'm not getting hit. I'm not getting electrocuted, and I'm not being hit by a log. And I'm thinking, well, dear God, give me 30 more seconds. Let me get this shot. Right? That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. But then later on, I realized that was really a stupid thing to do.
Yeah, but that video, I like that video very much, because that shows David. That's David. He shouldn't be doing that, but he gets, this amazing photos.
I know, but you just have to cross your fingers, and you know, you go out in a hurricane like that in the water, and then you get hurt, because the only way I really got hurt last year was slipping on a wet wooden thing on my bicycle. I was doing a perfectly safe thing, and that's how I got hurt. The dangerous stuff I did, I didn't get hurt. So there you go.
Okay, now, David, I got some questions from Juan Esteves and from the Paraty. Juan Esteves is the curator.
Right.
And there are some questions for you and some questions for me. So I'll ask you first the questions. One is, they say many photographers work on the themes of nature, seeking mainly the beauty of the images. However, the life that surrounds it benefits from it at the same time that it can also be a victim. How to have this immersion as a resident and documentary photographer at the same time?
Well, no, that's a really interesting question. How can you be part of the problem and part of the solution at the same time? And I think that is the question that we all have for ourselves every day, because we have to drive to work, we have to fly to work. Everything that we do affects the environment in a negative way, and that's true for the people who are trying to solve the problem as well as the people who don't care. So even if you're trying to solve it, you're probably still polluting more than you should, uh, even compared to somebody who doesn't care at all. Now, I don't. Well, the short answer is I don't have a short answer. I don't even have a long answer for that one. That's what I'm wrestling with. I'm trying to figure out how I can actually help. And then at a certain point, you know what you have to do? You just got to get out of bed and go do it. You think things through, but then you just got to stand up, get up, put your pants on, put your shoes on, grab a camera, get a couple of SD cards, get some batteries, stop thinking, and go shoot. I mean, you do all of your thinking first, but then at some point you just got to pick up a shovel and go dig. You know what I mean? And at some point you just got to go take pictures, and you don't have all the answers every time. You can't solve every philosophical and problem and political problem all by yourself at the same time. You just got to do your bit. So you take care of your family and you go take a picture.
Okay. The second question is, your work goes deep into the human essence. In this work, where you yourself say that it is not possible to change your entropic nature, what then remains for the photographer to leave as a legacy?
Well, that's another thing. What you leave as your legacy. I think that is it's a very similar question to the other one in a way. You do your work, you do your work as best you can. And for those of us who are photographers, I think all photographers do share a certain humanitarian vision of the world. I think most photographers, certainly the ones that are into documentary, have in the back of their mind that they'd like to help other people. They'd like to help save the planet. Most photographers, again, certainly the documentary ones, and most of the art photographers too, would really like to make a contribution, right? I mean, they really would. So I think you set yourself up. You want to do this kind of photography. You want to work in these places, and then again, you go to work, and you don't have any control over your legacy. Your legacy is going to be whatever happens. So you can really only kind of worry about the things that you have some kind of control over, which is not very much, right? So, like I said, if you've got two arms, two legs, two hands, and two eyes, you're already luckier than a whole bunch of other people. And if you got a camera in your hand and you're in a situation, then for heaven's sakes, stop complaining. Stop complaining and go work. Really, you are already luckier than most of other people on the planet who cannot do that. So if you're in a creative kind of position, that is being a photographer, count your blessings and show me your pictures that you just shot yesterday.
Okay, now, so those are two. Then he has some. There's some other questions for me, so I'll read.
Well, you're gonna ask yourself a question. Okay.
Well, we are living in a time of waste and mistreatment, not only of the environment but of culture. Although the participation of Jesuits in Brazil is controversial, how did we learn from them in those regions of the Amazon that you visited? I think um, it's true that there are several visions that have been critical to the role of the Jesuits in our histories. But as far as I know, as far in the place where I've worked, during the 17th and the 18th century, they, in these Bolivian settlements, I can speak for that place, they reached their hearts through music. They taught them to play music instruments. They made instruments, and they developed other types of skills also. And they protected them from slavery too. So I don't know, maybe in this period the Jesuits were more closer to their Ignatian roots. I don't know, but they did that. And otherwise, how can you explain that the local indigenous community or populations where I worked so carefully, so lovingly conserved these Baroque musical partitures? They discovered in 1972,000, and not 5,000, like 7,000 partitures that they had wrapped them in leather and escaped into to the woods to protect these.
So you're saying that let me just ask you a question. So they're saying that the indigenous population embraced the European instruments.
Yes, I think they respected their culture to begin with. That's why we still have so many. I think so, and that's the feeling I have of what I've heard, what I've read.
That is interesting, because I'm looking at when I look at colonization and I look at conquest from the European cultures, you would think that the indigenous would reject all of that stuff.
Yes, but in this area where I worked, I mean, how can you explain that you find musicians playing the cello, playing the violin in these communities, these remote communities?
Yeah, I know.
So there must be something. I'm not a historian, but I did my research.
Yeah, me neither. No, but I know it, but it does make you want to go in. It really does. Every time I get, you hear something like this about what you're talking about, your topic, which is fascinating. I immediately want to go in and find a bunch of books and read about that, because what did the Jesuits do to make it so that the indigenous population fell in love with the conquistadores, basically, at least the music and the instruments? Yeah, you wouldn't think they would do that, because other things they hid. And some of them pretended they were Catholics, but then they had other, candomblé and other things off to the side, right?
Right.
But in this case, they completely. You're saying I'm just going by what you're saying. They completely embraced the European.
I think so. They probably were problems, but yes, they did.
I'm sure that, probably.
And another question is, I have been in some states in the north and northeast where the cultures Marajoara and Santarém were presented. Here in Brazil, it is very difficult to find artisans inheriting their arts. What difficulties did you encounter along the way, and how did you overcome them? I think it was, well, I understand my colleagues in Brazil because the distances in Brazil are so huge. It's 8 times bigger than Bolivia. So I really, my heart goes out to them, to all the Brazilian photographs that work there. So the distance are much more difficult than it was for me. And also I had help of a very important person, that Marcelo Araúz, that he worked in these areas to promote these communities. So he was a guide. And I learned from David when I worked in Brazil. I learned from David how to take care in the favelas. Remember? So he taught me how to be careful in situations that are different.
Well, anyway, I don't think
You helped me. You taught me. We had a little problem there. But anyhow, I learned a lot from David, and I think, well, I had this another guy that Hugo Ochamanides. He helped me go into all these places. He was very protective. We had incidents. Which was the worst incident? That was maybe less than a year ago. We had this risk of wildfires and political protests that paralyzed my country. So I couldn't move. We couldn't go by air, I was working in that time. But he helped me, and I'm so grateful. So that would answer that part of the question. The third question is
I look at just on that one note. I look at any community as, I figure that every community's got a whole bunch of really good people in it and probably a few bad people in it, and so you just treat everybody straight up. I mean, I have never had any trouble in any of the favelas in Salvador or in Sao Paulo or in Rio de Janeiro either. I always go slow, and give pictures to people, and don't just stay in my lane. Stay in my lane, and then people will take you everywhere. I never had any problem. Like I say, I'm sure there's good people and bad people everywhere. I assume people are good people until they prove to me that they are not good people. Otherwise, I'm assuming they're good.
Yeah, that's true. And the last question is the importance of this record of yours is immeasurable in world culture, not just local. How do you expect to have the most effective reach with this work? Well, thank you first for your kind words. But without a forum like Paraty and Foco, for example, that I have the opportunity to show my photos, speak about them, these are important things. We have Burn magazine that you can send your photos, Burn diary. So all these places I think are very important. And I tend to over concentrate myself in on production, and it requires a lot of stress for me, and it's difficult to put my work outside. But I can say that David, Alejandra, his wife, Burn magazine helped me do this. Otherwise, I think my work would be in my hard drive, and yes, as from David, as I go and in this, I follow his advice, and I'm always grateful.
You make it, listen, you make it very easy for an editor, and I'm sure the curators at Paraty would agree with me. Maria, you've got really strong photography. There's no secrets. I mean, I know people want to attribute getting published or not getting published by knowing the right person and et cetera and doing this. Yes, you and I are friends, but I published you in Burn magazine. Well, of course you're my friend, but some of my friends don't get published in Burn magazine because their pictures aren't very good. You got published in Burn magazine because you had great photography. And then you were also a friend, but the reason that you got published was because the work was great. And I think there are a lot of editors out there in countries all over the world that would love to publish your work, and I'm sure will publish your work. You probably need some help in terms of agenting. But when I mentor young photographers, what the secrets are for making it in the business, I say it's the old fashioned way. If your work is good, editors are looking for it. I mean, I have sold my pictures and sold my stories, so I've been on the other side of it, obviously. And as an editor, receiving pictures from other photographers, I'm just like every other editor. I'm dying for the next Sebastian Salgado, or the next Maria Balcazar, or the next Sally Mann, okay, or the next Jody Cobb. I'm dying to see the next young version of anybody else, because we're always looking for for new photographers. And the secret is just the good old fashioned, go out and do it. If you have a good story in your head and you're a good visual person and you understand, it's a good idea if you understand anthropology and history and sociology. And if you've got a good basic education, that helps. And then look at yourself as going out to get an even better education on whatever story you're working on. That's when you learn about stuff. That's when you don't become an expert. At least I'll never be an expert on anything, but I'm always ready to soak up knowledge on whatever story that I'm working on. Never an expert, but know a little bit more than what I knew going in.
Okay, I think we can go to the final words now, David. And I think it's.
Yeah, I think so. I think the main thing that I hope comes across in our liaison here. I mean, Maria and I have become good friends. We're going to work on projects together. We've got a lot of mutual respect, right, Maria? Maria's working on new projects where she's working on a Bolivia Fiesta book. And then well, I'm not going to tell people what you're getting ready to work on after that. I'm going to let you tell people that. But special project, and we're going to work on it again. I'll serve as a mentor and as an editor for as long as Maria wants my help. And if she doesn't want my help, then that's okay too. I don't have control over anybody, and I don't want to have control over anybody. My job as a mentor is just to build a fire. Build a fire, because if you don't have a fire in the belly, if you don't have a fire in your belly, you're not going to do it. You gotta have a real strong mission. Be on a mission to do something special before you're going to do something special.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Giancarlo, Maxime, Juan, Milo, Theo, and all this amazing Paraty and Foco team that has hosted us and invited us. Thank you so much.
I hope within the next couple of years, I'd love to get back to Paraty.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That road coming in, the road coming in from up on high when you're driving from Sao Paulo and you come down into Paraty and you go around the next bend, and what are you going to see? Oh my God, another spectacular view, right? And then you go around another bend and there's another spectacular view. And then you come into the most charming town of your life, nice restaurants, bars, good hangout scenes, the water's there, islands offshore. No, it's great. Paraty is a very, very special place. Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you very much, and David, thank you for accepting.
Thanks for inviting Maria. This is your day, your time, your season for being celebrated, and I'm one of the ones celebrating you.
Well, thank you, David, very much, and thank you all of you.